Hi, I'm Linda Kay, and I'd like to welcome you again to Open Roads. We've been talking about how commercial real estate agent actually gets started in this business, and it isn't as straight ahead as going to a school and the school tells you exactly how you need to do this, since there isn't a handbook for this. We'll get to that later. Today, joining us is Chris Shahinian, and Chris has been with us a few times already, talking to us about the tools necessary for a real estate agent to invest in, the mindset of the real estate agent to stick with it, and how to handle some objections. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you, Linda. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
So, Chris, I know you get told this or you get asked this all the time, especially if you've been talking to clients for a while. They all say, Chris, bring me a good deal. What is a good deal? What do they mean by a good deal?
Good deal is different in everyone's eye. It varies from person to person, from situation to situation, from goal to goal. It all comes down to the goal and what you're looking for in the property.
Okay, so Chris, people's motivation for finding a good deal may be different at different times because of what might be pushing their decision. What is the least favorite time for an investor to be looking at properties or evaluating so that they can take their time?
The least favorite time is a 1031 exchange when they don't have enough time. Is that the correct answer to that question? 45 days?
Yeah, it is. It's a lot of pressure because once that clock starts ticking, you literally have 45 days to be able to get into and identify the like-kind properties. So that could put a lot of pressure on somebody. So typically the investors start looking a little bit earlier because you can do something called a reverse exchange. If you've got enough funds to be able to have the flexibility or the muscle to be able to do a reverse 1031, that takes all the pressure off of you to be able to make that like-kind investment. But Chris, before we get there, what are some of the key indicators that a commercial real estate agent has to be familiar with to speak to multifamily?
You have to be familiar with the cap rate of a property, the cash on cash. You have to be familiar with tenant situations in today's market, and you have to be familiar with gross rent multiplier, the GRM. These are all different metrics that investors will look at quickly and understand how a property is performing.
All right, so you mentioned three things. So let's take them one at a time, all right? A GRM, or a gross rent multiplier, how is that determined? What would you look at if you were an agent?
You'd be looking at the rents. Basically, it's you're multiplying the rents to come up with a number that will tell you quickly how a property is performing. And
compared to what, though? It sounds to me like you're making some comparison. What are you comparing that rent? I'm assuming that you're talking about an annualized rent, not a monthly rent. Is that right?
Yes.
Chris, you were just talking about gross rent multiplier. So in a gross rent multiplier, you're taking the annualized rent and comparing it to something. What are you comparing it to?
You're comparing it to the cap rate rather than the growth. You see, it says it in the name, gross rent multiplier. So that's basically calculating the gross rents compared to a cap rate, calculating the NOI, the net operating income.
So let's break it down just even further.
Right.
When I look at a gross rent multiplier as an agent, I see that it's performing in the market. So I'm really comparing the gross rent multiplier or that annualized rent to something, right? So if I were looking at a particular market deal, that market deal might say it's $3 million. Then I would take that annualized rent and I would take that and divide it into that property. Is that right? Is that how I'm going to?
Yeah, okay. You're going to divide it into the purchase price.
Okay, so I'm going to take the gross rent multiplier annualized. I'm going to divide it into what the market's doing. So I have to do a little bit of comparative marketing analysis. So I'm going to go pull a bunch of properties. So I'm going to go look. Where would you go typically find this information?
You find this information on the MLS. You can find it on LoopNet.
You find it on the MLS? You're looking in the MLS for this, like a standard MLS?
Like the multiple listing service.
And a typical multiple listing service would be who?
The multiple listing service is a program that realtors have to purchase. That's a part of their
subscribe to, correct?
Subscribe to, yeah. They subscribe to it. It's a
so
yearly.
Give me an example of one or two.
Like you mean like listing services or
Yes.
So the MLS is one example, and there's other non-paid websites like LoopNet, and CoStar is actually paid. So there's LoopNet, there's CoStar, which is paid, which is for the commercial section of real estate. You can go on Redfin, there's Zillow. These are all free ones as well.
Now, I thought that those were typically just residential. Are you telling me I can find commercial there too?
You can, yeah. You can find multifamily for sure.
Is the information reliable?
The information, most of the time, it is reliable. But when it comes down to price, no, it's not reliable. You have to have a professional doing an analysis on your property.
But we're talking about a key indicator here. So we're talking about how does the property perform compared to other things that are on the market. That's why we compare it. Isn't that right?
Yeah, exactly. So anything that's listed on the MLS, yeah.
All right. I wasn't aware that the MLS allows you to do that. I know that for a period of time, the MLS put that information up, but none of it was reliable. Are you saying it's reliable again?
What they put is not reliable, but you need to do your own research and calculate your own numbers. And that, I think that's what you wanted me to get into.
So what you're saying is, I trust my mom, but I'll cut the deck.
Yeah, exactly. No, you don't want to trust their calculations, because, you know, people can they can miscalculate, and always it's for your own practice. You got to calculate and you got to do the motions in your head so you become more of an expert.
All right. So now we've gotten through the gross rent multiplier. Then you said cap rate. What do you mean by cap rate?
Cap rate is the percentage of return on the asset or the property that you're purchasing on a yearly, so an annual return basis.
So it's the capitalization of it. Is that what you're saying?
Capitalization, exactly.
All right. We'll go into some of these details in another lesson when I want to drill down, but we're just looking at key indicators. You also said net operating income, or NOI. Is that right?
NOI, yes, net operating income.
It sounds like it's going to be net of something. So you're going to take the gross of something and subtract something to get the net. What do you do? Tell me what that formula looks like.
Yes, so you take the gross income and you subtract any expenses that your property has, and then that gives you your net operating income.
So for instance, would the net operating income be important with a cap rate?
Yes, it's very important. That's what gives you the cap rate.
Prioritize it for me. What do you find first?
So first you have to find the gross income.
Okay.
Then you have to figure out what the expenses are. From there, you minus.
And is there a formula for finding those expenses? I mean, is there a ratio? Is a ratio important or
There's
irrelevant?
Definitely a ratio. It's an average of 30%, but it can differ from each property. So you got to make sure to talk to the agent who's listing the property, talk to the owner, and try to get as much information as possible, which could be difficult at times. So sometimes people don't want to give you information. Sometimes people are not in a good mood. And it all comes down to timing, you know, like how we went back to it.
Or
timing.
They just get you off the phone, isn't that right?
Yeah, they just want to get you off the phone. So maybe that's a good thing. Maybe they'll just give it to you and be like, they'll hang up as long as you get the information.
Oh, we should all be this fortunate, right? Okay,
Right.
So Chris, I want to know, have you ever done an ugly deal? A deal that you really didn't like and you did it anyway and then you regretted it?
An ugly deal. In the last podcast, you wanted me to get a hero, a zero, and the one that got away.
All right,
So
let's talk about the zero. Let's start at the bottom because we can always work our way up.
Okay, perfect. Sounds good. So I'm going to share my screen. I have them set up here so you guys can see.
Beautiful.
That should be good.
So tell us, it looks like we're looking at a setup. It's an overall view of the details. So you can look at a property, quickly evaluate whether or not you want to go a little bit further, or if you need more information, or if you go, yeah, it's a pass. All right, walk us through the most critical thing. What is it? Where is it? Then talk us through the indicators.
Great. So this is the zero I pulled up from my experience and from my career and situations that I've been in. So you have 4 units. It's in Venice. It's a property that my clients purchased from me, which was a win. But then down the line, they vacated the property and we listed the property.
So you had tenants in each of those 4 units. Can we look at the price that you were getting at that time? Is this then or is this after?
So this is the zero situation. The price that we purchased it at was 1.45. When my clients initially purchased the property, yeah.
So the list price isn't 2.2. That's the after picture. Is that right?
So the list price was 2.225. We had it fully vacant in Venice. Very valuable for a property to be fully vacant. So we took it from, we basically gave the opportunity in the vacancies.
So let's talk about that for just a second, because there are times when an investor is going to want to buy an asset that you're describing, but you bought it for way under the list price. If they were asking 2.2 and you bought it for 1.4, that is a huge win for your client.
Right. No, this is actually our listing. I was going to go into the situation where COVID hit, and this is our listing, and it ended up falling out of escrow. That's what I was going into.
Got it. So set us up again and then walk us through the deal.
Yeah. Let's not focus on my clients purchasing it. Let's just focus on the list of it. I think that's okay. Right here we have the 4-unit property. My clients purchased it, and we wanted to get it back on the market and relist it. And this was right before.
Meaning you were going to flip it, is that right?
Yes, they were on the tail end of the flip, and we wanted to get it on the market. And it's 4 units. It's in Venice. It's a 2,800 square foot building, and it was fully vacant. We had it in escrow. We're non-contingent in escrow, and COVID hit. And there was a lot of fear in the market where, our client who was purchasing the property ended up backing out, and we lost this deal. We're at the home stretch and we're about to cross the finish line, and never be happy in real estate until you get your check. This definitely taught me that lesson.
Oh, you tell us such a valuable lesson, and that's a war story, Chris. So it fell out of escrow. Why did it fall out?
It fell out because there was fear in the market. We didn't know what was coming next. Nobody knew what was going to happen with COVID. And as you know, everyone was stuck inside their houses and just waiting for the next news article and waiting for the next update. That's just how
afraid to go outside, afraid to stay inside. That about sums it up. So your clients decided, okay, it would be, let's make sure that the viewers understand this. When you go non-contingent, that means you have no other reason legitimately for you to get out of the property without losing something. What did they lose?
You lose your deposit.
And in this instance, how much did they lose?
There was a situation where we went into arbitration and they came to agreement. I think it was, I'm not really too sure of the details.
That's okay. We don't need those details. But basically, if they wanted their money back, they had to go fight for it, didn't they?
Right. You would have to go into court and be in a certain situation.
Okay. So that's a lose-lose for your client. So they go, okay, it's cheaper for us to get out of this thing. We know that there's going to be a loss here somewhere, but we stand a better chance if we go to arbitration or we go to lawsuit to get out of this, because we don't know what's going to happen in the future.
Right. Exactly.
All right, so you get out of this situation and you walk away, and for the agent, that's always really, really disappointing. Why is it so disappointing?
The time that you spend, it's so much time showing the property and driving to the west side and negotiating on the property and going through offers and opening escrow and falling out of escrow. It's a lot of work, and when you don't get that close, it's definitely something that could throw you off in the wrong direction. But you got to stay strong and remember about the wins that you have and the successes. That's what will keep you grounded and keep you happy.
All right, fair enough. And it's a good point, Chris. Take us to the hero story now.
So this property was listed on the market for about a year, and it was listed very high. It was poorly marketed. It's a 4-unit, multi-unit in Echo Park, and
great area.
Listed on the Yeah, great area. It's definitely up and coming and beautiful Victorian homes and a lot of character. It was listed for 1.8 initially. We did make an offer for 1 million on the property, and we got rejected initially.
That's a sizable haircut to the owner of the property. And of course, explain to the viewer, where are we in the market? So are we recovering from COVID, or are we through COVID? Or, tell me where we are time-wise.
Timing is important. It's everything in real estate. I think we're definitely recovering from COVID, no doubt. Are we fully recovered? No.
When did you do this transaction? Where was this in light of COVID? Pre-COVID, post-COVID, during COVID?
So this was post-COVID.
All right. So nobody believes that we're out of it. So this is a great story. Let's hear what you do with this, because what you're describing, Chris, is something that I can attest to, having been through a down market. We don't know when the down market's going to come. What could be the indicator that happens? Could be the rise in interest rates. It could be the recession. It could be the Great Recession. It could be another pandemic. Any of these things can spook your investment community and keep them from wanting to move forward. Where one man won't move forward, another one will, with an open wallet and an open mind, and seize an opportunity. Clearly, you got a hero story.
So it was listed for that high amount. It was marketed poorly, and then I made an offer for 1 million on the property, and about 6 months, probably 7 months later, the broker reached out to me saying, hey, my clients are, and this is a broker that I stay in contact with. I follow up with them. How's the property in Echo Park going? Like, any offers? My clients are still very interested. And this is like a every 2 weeks type basis, like
what
me
you're
calling
describing, Chris, is really important, and every listener should hear this, because most agents believe if you're not working on the same team, you're competitive, of course, but then you're the enemy, because you could potentially steal my client, you could steal my deal. But what you're describing is coopetition, and that's different, and that's really key here, because that's how you find out about things that are on market, off market, things that didn't work, things that could be working again. And in this instance, they knew you had an interest. So take us back there.
Definitely the follow-up, staying on their top of their radar. Just like a broker and an owner, it's similar. You're calling them, you're staying on top of their radar, you're letting them know my client's still here, he's still interested. You're showing them their proof of success and how they can perform on this property. And the hero story for this property is I ended up opening the escrow. He came back to me and said, hey, my clients are ready to do the million, let's do it. Open escrow, we come see the property, it needs tons of work. There's a bunch of junk inside the property. We have to vacate the property. And through negotiations, we got it at the price that is listed there, which is $625.
Wow, that's huge.
Huge reduction in price, and great work between me and the selling broker and the owners. And, it ended up being a win-win situation. Yeah.
This is such a great hero story. But tell me a little bit about the owners. Did they inherit the property, or did they live in the property for a long time? I mean, there's a huge disparity between 625 and 1.8. You got it for 1/3 of their original asking price. How did that happen? Why was it originally so priced high?
Well, that's the thing about timing, is because there's a certain time where a seller may not have as much motivation, and they'll list at a number that really doesn't make sense in the market. And then the right time will come around where they're more motivated, and they say, hey, we're ready to take that offer that we got a while back. Is that broker still interested? And of course, I'm here ready to go.
Timing in life is everything, Chris. It could make the difference of you meeting the right person in your life, the right opportunity, or the right deal. All right, so talk to us now about the one that got away.
This beautiful property that we had a listing, and it just all comes right back
it's
to
a beautiful property. Look at that.
2 units in Venice. It was a listing that I did not end up selling. I lost the opportunity. Started off at a price that was a bit high in the market. If you list a property and you're not getting much activity and action, there has to be something off, and that usually is the price, because if the price is right, your phone's going to be ringing. And
So there's an expression in residential that if you don't have multiple offers within the first 30 days, your market knows. And in this instance, you're talking about the market. So the market always knows. Who's the first one to know that the market went up? The owner of the property. Who's the last one that will admit that the market went down?
The owner of the property.
Same guy, right? Or woman. What you're describing though is, a huge difference. And what occurs, particularly in an investment market, is the motivation of the buyer. So if the buyer is highly motivated, got to have a house for the family, the school's starting, and this is the perfect neighborhood, and it's more money than I want to spend, or I'm an investor and I'm about to lose my exchange and I'm going to pay more for my capital gains. So it all depends on the timing and your motivation. So what happened?
We had some interest as we were reducing the price. We did have some interest come in, and there was offers that we were receiving, but it wasn't the seller's number, and ended up being a situation where the motivation wasn't 100% there from the seller, and the offers that we were receiving, they ended up walking and finding other properties and just going other places.
Very frustrating. And were you representing the seller or the buyer?
I was representing the seller on this one, yes.
So was the seller living in the property?
The seller purchased this property from me, actually. He purchased it and he did a full gut renovation on the property. So
nice. Okay.
Yeah, he gave me the opportunity to list it. It ended up selling with another real estate agent.
No, we hate this. We hate this. Every agent that has ever been in a transaction and they lose the buyer or they lose the seller, remember somebody else is going to come along, and what one man's ceiling is another man's floor. The disappointment was huge, and I can sense that.
I was happy for my client. It is what it is. It's the timing that was off. It was the motivation that was off. Maybe the other broker had a different situation with him, and the motivation became more relevant in his life. And there you go. It is what it is. The one thing I say is to stay active, have a lot of deals, have a lot of things keeping you busy, so something like this doesn't distract you from everything that you could be doing and how much you could be succeeding.
I'll tell you what, Chris, it is so motivating to hear how well you've done. And it's such a short period of time, and to keep going, to keep steady, keep going the pace, and having those milestones of success that will up-level you to your next level. Chris, we're going to drop your name on the bottom of the screen so people know how to find you. They can call you and say, Chris, find me a good deal.
That's right. Let's hear it. Let's hear your goals first, and then we'll find a good deal for you. Let's do it.
Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for tuning in and seeing another chapter in our open roads. Where will you go next? I'm Lindy Kay. Bye-bye.